I'm Cara Sinclair. I am your host for the Wellness Leadership Podcast. Starting off as an Isa Carstens alumni for the Diploma in Somatology and your Advanced Diploma in Dermal Aesthetics, I've had extensive experience in therapy and in management abroad. My heart is in management, definitely, and my heart is for students to be able to profit from this industry. Can you be a good therapist, but can you make this your vocation? That is what this podcast is all about. Why should you listen to the Wellness Leadership Podcast? Because every conversation has been chosen with purpose. These topics were not selected because they are trending, nor were they chosen at random. By analyzing hundreds of structured workplace reflections, we identified the leadership themes that appeared most consistently and shaped the first conversations around them. As a higher education institution with over 48 years of excellence in beauty, aesthetics, spa and wellness education, we prepare professionals for practice, not only theory. This series brings together academic expertise, real-world industry experience, and authentic workplace insight. This is not a lecture, and it is more than a conversation. It is designed to help you understand the leadership principles behind successful businesses and translate them into practical actions you can apply, whether you're leading a team or preparing for your first leadership role. Subscribe to gain fresh perspective, practical insight, and leadership ideas that help strengthen the future of the wellness industry. Hello and welcome to our next episode of the Wellness Leadership Podcast by the Isa Carstens Academy. Today's episode is all about time management and operations within the spa and salon environment. Every therapist has had that experience. You finish a day where every appointment felt rushed. You didn't have any breaks. You didn't get time to really connect with your client. And that is never the intention when we start out. We start off the day on time. We start prepped. And somewhere along the line, we just lose the plot. With our student data that we collected for the purpose of this podcast series, we see specifically issues like double bookings happening in our schedule. There's no turnover time in our appointments. There's no breaks for our therapists. We see no time to really connect and improve the client journey. Some quotes from our students in this time was, "My whole day fell apart because my bookings were not properly managed at reception," or "Our therapists did not get any breaks in the day and were still asked to reach KPIs, still asked to retail, to rebook the clients," which really is not a practical or a realistic approach. So all of these aspects, all of our double bookings, our lack of breaks in the system, this is not an admin issue. This speaks about leadership within the industry. And on that topic, we have an industry expert today, Izelle Louw. Welcome, Izelle.
Thank you, Cara.
Izelle is an alumna of Isa Carstens, so welcome back to us. She is also the owner, the founder, and the CEO of Mommy Wellness. And Mommy Wellness, you've now expanded. You've got about 10 branches.
Correct.
And you take a very different approach to your treatments. You do stepping away now from our one-size-fits-all approach. It's not a copy-paste treatment.
Yeah.
You really customize the client journey based on the season of womanhood that they're in, whether that would be young girls, mothers, or families.
Yeah.
I'm sure when you look at your schedule and your customized approach and with different branches, this is a problem that you encounter quite often.
Yeah, no, definitely. For us at Mommy Wellness, we obviously cater for pregnant clients as well. And we've had this a few times where clients would be in labor, in hospital, sending us a message, "Listen, I'm in hospital, I'm about to give birth, but I can't make my appointment." Or a little girl that has a pamper party with us, but she's sick and her mum needs to cancel the appointment. So for us, with education for our therapist that works at the Mommy Wellness salons, that they understand how we handle that. We can easily charge a 50% deposit, but will that client come back? Because it's something that's out of her control. So we are very lenient with that because we cater. And at the end of the day, it's a client experience that's why they come back. So yeah, we do encounter this a few times, but the education for our therapists in regards to that and how to handle that and have compassion for the client is very important.
Definitely, I think it's a big factor to have that mindset of being prepared for changes every day in your schedule. So being prepared for an unexpected change, but also having the mindset of service, right?
Definitely.
To know that we're here for the client. It's not about me. It's not about the KPIs that I've been set, but how can I best serve my client?
Yeah, because you want that client to come back to you. And if you don't show compassion, she will just go somewhere else, because it's something that she didn't plan, she didn't foresee she's going to give labor. So yeah, that's very important to us.
All right, Izelle, one of the biggest concerns that I often see in the industry is we would have a fantastic business, fantastic capacity, but we don't have an allocated person on reception or to manage our bookings. We often find that therapists are put in slots on reception to manage incoming bookings, and especially with online bookings. Why do you think we underestimate the importance of scheduling so often?
I think the first issue is that therapists don't realize that a receptionist can also have sick days, and she might not be there on the day, but then who handles those bookings? So I think as a therapist and as a business owner, you underestimate that role. But at the end of the day, everyone should be able to fill that role. And it comes back to training. Have they been trained to be on reception, to handle a difficult client? Do they know how to then reschedule that client? So it all comes back to everyone needs to be able to fill that role. You can't just rely on, say, for instance, it's an owner manage, that the owner would know, because sometimes she's not in the industry. So she also would need to be educated. But if your reception is not there, for me, all the therapists need to be able to do that job. And they sometimes take a step back to say, but it's not my job. I don't need to do that. But then what happens if the receptionist is not there? Then someone needs to step up and say, listen, all right, let's handle this. Let's do this. But again, like we said before, it's a mindset of they need to be everything in the salon and not just my column and my clients that I worry about.
It's so important to also take care of your own clients, to manage your own column. I enjoy the thought process of having your own business. Your column is your business, but that extends to scheduling as well. When you see your client won't be on time, taking the initiative to then fill that slot and not waiting for reception to do it. And having those soft skills on communicating with clients, especially difficult clients. We see either that therapists lean back from it, being apprehensive of it, or they become combative almost. And we should again have that service mindset, which in turn will really give an elevated longevity approach to our businesses.
And in an ideal world, if you can swap them, to have a therapist at reception, and then that therapist is again a therapist in the room that they can get, because sometimes also therapists get annoyed with the receptionist because it's my column. Now you've booked my column like this, but they don't realize what the receptionists are dealing at the other end of the phone when they're on the phone with the client. So to let them also get a taste of what it is to manage 5 or 6 columns and make everyone happy. It's not the easiest job.
It's not easy at all. I think that's the biggest thing that we see, and it comes with time as well. It comes with skill. It comes back to what you said about it having to be an intentional part of training. We need to show them consistently how do the booking systems work. Not only to know, but being able to do it quickly in real time while communicating with the client.
No, definitely.
So is our time management, or rather the lack of time management, is rarely an issue in isolation. We see a lack of time management bleeding into burnout in our therapists. We see that hygiene protocols are skipped or corners are cut. We see that consultations are rushed, and then clients don't really return to the spa. All of these issues tie back to proper time management, to proper leadership in the industry. Why does this happen so quickly and so often? We know in established businesses what to do, what not to do. Why is it still an active issue?
I think the first thing is that a lot of the business owners that own salons or a franchise, like for instance in our instance, they don't come from the industry. So that's the first problem you're sitting with, because they don't understand the scheduling, first of all, and how that works and how it affects a therapist. For me, I always tell the franchisees, it's easier for me to see it because I'm a therapist myself. So to manage a column is much easier for me and to see the gaps than for them. And because they come from a corporate and all of a sudden they're in a service industry where we just said before that your clients is always right. And we're there to serve our clients.
100.
We're in a service industry. While they are corporate, they back-to-back meetings, they're driven by goals. They don't really service a client. So I think that's the biggest issue of owners in the industry that's not from the industry. And then they have expectations of they want to run it as a corporate on back to back to back. And sometimes I also fall into it because it's like you had your quiet month and then all of a sudden there's now your summer month and your spring month. So now we need to book, we need to do this. To take a step back and say, listen, all right, let's go back to basics. Why are we scheduling it the way we're doing it? But I think the biggest thing is targets also driven. So you've got the owner that's not from the industry, that's from corporate. She's used to maybe driving targets, and now all she sees is targets, and I need to make this target, so I need to schedule it. And that's when you say, there's double bookings, or there's therapists that goes without a break, a lunch or a tea break, or whatever the case might be. And therapists are flexible. We both know that, you might take a break like at 10 o'clock in the morning because you don't have lunch between 12 and 3 o'clock, but then I have another break later. But I think the ripple effect is there, and it's definitely visible as soon as I think the owner loses sight of what is important and how the scheduling should actually work.
That disconnect, I think, creates such a big problem long term. And as a manager, we need to refer to our staff, but also to whoever sets the target for us. From a financial standpoint, it might make sense to set a specific target, but it is not sustainable long term because the client suffers. And in the same way, we need to continuously check in with the therapist because we might have 12-hour working days and we might be reaching our target, but is that sustainable firstly for the therapist and for the culture? When your staff turnover starts to suffer on that, your treatment quality suffers, it's not really sustainable and it's not worth it for us to do that.
No, it's definitely. And I always also say to the franchisees, always have someone in the business that keeps you accountable. So if it's an owner, have your manager keep you accountable and let her guide you, because she stands in the industry. She's there on the day-to-day basis. So let her guide you as to, but this is unrealistic. Exactly. This is what is realistic in the industry. And again, as a business owner, you don't like to be told. I'm the business owner. I know what I'm doing. But, to have that accountable partner to guide you through of what is actually happening on the ground, on a day-to-day basis.
And to keep you consistent, I think we get anxious or we get fed up, especially because our work is seasonal. In the winter months, it'll go slower. We might feel like we need to prepare more or work harder or catch it up to pace ourselves in that time, especially for those loyal clients that are there through the winter months. They don't deserve them to be skimped on in our busy times.
Yeah, not true.
So let's do a quick reality check. When we look at all these problems that we're discussing now, it's not new information. Our managers, our therapists, we know these things. We know that we need to book properly. We know we need that turnover time in between treatments, but it still happens. Why are we seeing that? Why are we seeing that lack of client care, that lack of time management in our industry?
I think everyone knows the secret of booking that 15-minute slot extra. So if you book an hour treatment, you put the 15-minute slot extra and your next client comes, for instance, at 9:15. And a lot of times when you book that 15 minutes treatment, our owner's mind immediately goes into overdrive. But if you count those 15 minutes, I can do another hour treatment. And I think it's a short-term, okay, but we need to do it now. And it's a short-term solution of taking it away. But again, like we said with the ripple effect, now you take that 15 minutes away. So what happens to your client? They're there for an hour. You're a sausage factory. They come in and out. there's no goodbye even from the therapist. You still expect her to say goodbye to the client. You still expect the therapist to retail, to rebook, to upsell, but she doesn't have the time. It's like a corporate person running from one meeting to another. Where's there where you can just take notes or just reflect on what's just happened in the previous meeting? It's the same with the therapist. So like you mentioned at the start, they've got KPIs. They are measured by it, but still the owners see that 15-minute slot and I think, oh, let's just take it away. We can fit in another treatment. It's another 1,000 Rand that we can make. But long term, that's not sustainable. And it's not sustainable for your business, but also for your clients. Because the clients are going to feel like it's just a sausage factory. Where was it where I could have a glass of water afterwards or a cup of tea? And you don't realize the small little things why clients actually come back. But that is the thing. And I think also to protect our therapists, give them that 15 minutes because the staff turnover is not going to be that big a problem because all of a sudden they can make target, they can make their retail target, they can do rebookings, and it's just a calmer environment for them running from one thing to another, and then you still expect them to do their job.
I think there's always going to be issues that arise, but when we prepare for it, being proactive. When we looked at the points that our students listed for us, it was reactive decisions in the moment. When we have those 15-minute time slots that give us space to really think about what we're going to do. It comes back for me to scheduling as well. When you have someone on reception that understands scheduling, what I often see with working with students in our Isa Carstens Wellness Sanctuary is they would accept the client's time that the client offers. Where in your treatment room or in your business, you're the owner and you have to direct the client. If you give a slot for 11 o'clock or 11:30, you would have issues in the morning because you will have limited time. And we get to a Friday where we're quite busy and we try to squeeze that client in. If we plan properly, we don't have that problem.
But that's also again with their mindset of scheduling and how it works. That comes back to that again.
So we've discussed in depth the problems that we see around scheduling and operational management in our industry, with therapists, with management, and then with our corporate owners. So what would good time management, in your opinion, look like practically? What would we see? And what would the effect of that be on our staff and on our clients?
I think, first of all, like we mentioned before, the accountability. So having that someone in the business, if it's your therapist to keep you accountable, your manager to keep you accountable. But then it's also, again, I know we hammer on training, but training can never stop.
100%.
And we need to then continue and do continuous training with the therapist. But what are you actually doing in that 15 minutes? Because we both know therapists can't take chances. It's the reality. But then why do they have that 15 minutes? It's not to just go for a smoke break. Hopefully they don't smoke, but that they just sit and relax and be on their phone for that 15 minutes. But why do we do that? That they can also get a refresher because again, they're in their treatment room. They continue doing treatments one after the other. And yes, they might forget. They might be in a rush getting done, maybe run to the bathroom, whatever. But to educate them again, we do that 15 minutes for you to not let hygiene fall by the wayside, to give you the opportunity to rebook, to retell to the client because this is what she needs to take home. So I think the accountability and then the training continuous with the therapist is where I would start, especially. And then training the receptionist again, if she needs to, like you said before, the scheduled times, if a client phones in, we offer the 8 o'clock slot, we offer the 5 o'clock slot, that they understand, but why we're doing it, because the other slots are much easier to fill. I would start there in terms of bookings and getting the booking system right in the salon environment and letting the therapist understand, but why do you maybe take a 15-minute break here and an hour break there or whatever the case might be?
I think the most important thing for me about management is I have to remind myself continuously that I am dependent upon my staff. You as a manager cannot have a successful business if your therapist is not equipped to do their job. And definitely. So I try to communicate that to staff as well. All the regulations, all the systems that are put in place are there to make it easier for you to
Yeah.
do your job. And the same with consistent training.
Yeah.
When we refresh, when we're on the same page all the time, it can become like second nature, right? You don't have to think about it all the time. This is how it's done.
Yeah.
And we equip them to have a better outcome, to reach their KPIs more frequently and with more ease. When we do consistent training, when we schedule them properly, when we book those time slots that are not as popular, because the rest will take care of itself. And when that foundation is there and that communication is there, it's much easier to deal with problems on the spot.
Yeah. And I think all the owners need to remind themselves this. You can't work with short-term solutions. It's a long-term thing. You want to have that client base build on. You want to have returning clients because that's your best clients, is your returning clients. And if you're going to take the 15 minutes away, all of a sudden they're not going to feel special anymore. So I think owners need to remind themselves this is a long-term game you're playing. And again, our clients come first. You're there to service them. And what does service look like to you as a business? And what do you want clients to talk about when they leave your business?
Especially when a client comes to you and they trust you, that is so valuable. You know, we forget how valuable and how sacred our work is, really. We get so close physically to our clients that when that trust is established, I think we shouldn't underestimate the value of the client there. And making an extra 1,000 rands a day is not worth losing that high value client.
No, I agree, definitely.
So let's bring all of the time management discussions that we had back to leadership, right? I love that we're using the word leadership because it doesn't necessarily mean that it's only a manager that can lead. Our therapist in their capacity, when they're on reception, when they're in a difficult situation, also has the capacity and the opportunity to be a leader. So what do I, as a leader, in my business prioritize in terms of my staff and my peers, and what am I teaching them to prioritize here?
Yeah, I think it again comes back to the client. You know, they are there for the client. We're not there for ourselves. We're there for the client, and she must be number one, and that needs to be prioritized every single day. And I think also it is important to check in terms of wellness for the therapist, because you and I have worked with clients and it's draining, you know, and I think we need to also look at the wellness of our therapists, of how are you doing? You're seeing 8 to 12 clients a day, you know, so let's check in with you as a person. How are you coping with it? You know, especially in the summer months when it's so busy. So I think obviously our client is first, but we tend to forget about our therapists, what they deal on a daily basis.
I definitely agree with you. I think when we come back to it, like I said before, we are so dependent on our staff. So if our staff are happy and they're feeling taken care of and they've got the capacity to deal with clients one-on-one, which gets so draining, you know, when you're speaking with people on a daily basis all the time, the client really experiences when we're not in a service headspace. And so when we go into these busy months, really to ensure that our staff are well prepared, that they're well rested, because they won't reach their KPIs and in turn we won't be successful as a business. So I definitely agree with that. If our staff are happy and taken care of, we're going to see much better success going forward.
Because from an owner, you're in a leadership position with your therapist, you know, in other words, you're in a service leadership to your therapist, while they are then again a service to your clients, you know, so it comes from the top. And sometimes we so get caught up with the day to day. And I mean, I'm guilty myself, that you need to stop and think, but I'm in a leadership position, but then how do I service my therapist? Because they're servicing 12 clients a day for you, and your business wouldn't exist without those two compartments. You know, so I think it's a reality check for me as well today to think back again, you know, when last did we check in with them? Because we're so focused on targets and doing this and doing that, but really are we looking out for the therapist?
it really places a responsibility on yourself as well, right? To take care of yourself, to ensure that you are in a good mind space when you do come to work. Because as our therapists, as we need to serve them, we also need to be in a space where we have the capacity to be at work and not sell ourselves short.
Yeah,
right?
no, definitely. You can't, what they always say, you can't pour from an empty cup.
100%.
So it's for everyone in the business.
So we've covered a lot of information today. Let's get back to a few practical takeaways. So if you consider everything that we've spoken about today, for our listeners, whether that is someone that is working as a therapist, if it's someone that's moving from therapy into a managerial role, someone that's opening their own business or a franchise, if you could give 3 to 5 practical points to focus on, what would your takeaway be for today?
I would say you need to start with the training, the education part of it. So I would start there, make sure everyone is on the same page, everyone knows how you expect the business to run, and we're specifically talking about bookings today. So focusing on that and have a training session and do that. Then we said about the accountability, identify someone in the business that can keep you accountable and tell them, listen, if I do go off rail, please put me back onto my rail and help me. And then we need to remind ourselves that we're in a service industry. If you go into a salon, what would you expect? Or into a spa, to have that reality check again, to say, listen, let's go back to basics, because we tend to forget about the basics, and it's the basics that works, so go back to that. What is the basics? Why did you start this business? You started the business, or you started to be a therapist or become a therapist because you want to service clients. You are passionate about the industry. And I think that a lot of times we lose that passion because it's just this. It's one after the other after the other. So I think we need to just recap on the passion as well, and remind ourselves why we're in the industry, because you won't be in the industry if you don't have the passion.
We spoke in one of our earlier episodes about how we can become desensitized to the client journey.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important about our research here, is it is from our students. It's a fresh perspective, an unbiased perspective, which is why they pick it up so strongly. They still have that passion. They're still excited.
Yeah,
when we're in this industry, our work is repetition, right? It's always consultation, education, treatment, retail, and we start all over. And to take that space and come back and say, this is why I chose to be here. This is why I choose to serve. It's cold. It's so important.
Yeah. And also, now that you mentioned the students, because we get a lot of students that do their hours, at the business, is to really listen to them.
Yes.
Because like you just said, it's a new perspective. It's someone new that walks into the business with a fresh perspective, and they have the passion for it. And we sometimes disregard what they say, unfortunately, because we're so caught up in our way of doing things, and just having their perspective puts a different spin on your business again.
Definitely. It's a nice, fresh view on something that we're already well versed in.
Yeah, definitely.
We've really covered a lot of our real-time challenges in terms of time management and operations in our episode today. Our experience here is vital, but it is also good to supplement our knowledge with educational programs and learning, especially around time management and staff management when it comes to operations in spa. So it is such a vast subject that in our advanced diploma in spa and salon management at Isa Carstens, it fills out a whole module. I really found that it was beneficial information in terms of managing different groups of staff and managing your systems. I want to say thank you for joining me today, Izelle. It's very important information that we've discussed today. We're quite excited to see the feedback on that. And we know that it's going to be beneficial for both therapists, owners, and our managers in the industry.
No, thank you so much, Cara. I really enjoyed it.
Fantastic.